4-step system that I use to walk landlords through that. Okay. So the first is we don't just let anybody book the property. Okay. So we have certain parameters that we set up on Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, that guests have to meet certain criteria. Like they have to have a completed profile with their name, email, phone number, government issued ID. And they also have to have a positive review from another host already, which is like a landlord referral, right? And they have to message us and let us know what brings them to the area, how many people are going to be there, and who is going to be staying at the property with them. So if they meet all those criteria, okay, boom, then we'll accept the booking. Next is we use a Wi-Fi lock system. So nobody ever gets a physical key to the property. So the particular system that we use, the guests either can get a keypad code or they can download the app on their phone, and they set up a profile. And I can see if their selfie from the app matches the selfie from Airbnb. It's the same person that's booking and going to the property, right? And their access is only good from the time of check-in to check-out. So nobody could like ever go back. You see a lot of amateurs will use these like keypad door locks and they don't change the codes. So like if I stay at your place and then I come back 2 days later, I'm like, dude, you see that 80-inch TV? You know what I mean? Like so from a security standpoint, they can only access the property for that period of time.
Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast, your source for real-world strategies focused on creating long-term wealth, cash flow, and financial freedom through real estate. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful real estate investors and thought leaders, we provide you the tools to succeed and reach the lifestyle you always wanted. And now your host, Dwaine Clarke.
Hello and welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is your host, Dwaine Clarke. And today we have Michael Sjogren. Michael is a CPA and MBA and Premier AIRBND Investment Expert. Michael is also a consultant, coach, speaker, and founder of Occupied and Short-Term Rental Secrets. Mike, thank you so much for joining us on the show. And how are you, brother?
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. We met probably over the summer at a meetup group. And like I said, we just kind of bonded and connected. And I was really impressed by kind of like your background and your story, and then kind of your focus on Airbnb, which is, not many people that I heard of is really like kind of specializing it and doing it on your particular level. So before we start kicking things off, would you mind kind of sharing a little bit about your background and how you got started in the Airbnb journey?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, like you mentioned, I started my career as an accountant, working as a CPA, doing that, grinding out the 9 to 5, pretty much following the advice that we all got in school, right? Go to school, get good grades, get a good job, put 10% in a 401k, and then somehow magically you're going to retire rich, right? Like that's the advice that we're all given. And a few years in, I got to the point where my wife and I, things were going pretty good. We had a nice little house. We just had our first baby. And unfortunately, he was born with a rare lung disease called interstitial lung disease. And so we spent a lot of time at the hospital. And basically, he had to be on oxygen. Anytime he fell asleep, he'd need to be on oxygen, need to be monitored. So we spent a lot of time at the hospital. And I just remember at one point, we had been at the hospital for about 3 weeks straight. And I just remember thinking to myself, all right, I've been here 3 weeks. I'm out of vacation time. I'm out of sick time. All these hospital bills are piling up. And I'm going to have to leave my family in this situation because I need to make a paycheck. And like, as a man, as a father and a husband, like that was the worst pain I could possibly feel. It was like just this dagger in my side of like, you got to go, man. Like this, you have to leave your family right now. And in that moment, I vowed and I told my wife, I said, I will find a way to create a business that gives us income without trading our time. Like I will never trade my time for money again. And it just launched me down this journey of like studying everything I could about passive income, which led me down the course of real estate and rental property, which it all made sense. But I'm doing the math in my head of like, okay, if I have to replace, my salary, my wife's salary, I'm doing the math in my head on how many doors I'm going to need. It felt overwhelming. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get to that point. Like, it just seems impossible. And then I stumbled across this new strategy of Airbnbs and short-term rentals from a guy in a mastermind group that I was in. And he was telling me that he was generating anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a month in cash flow, like net cash flow per property, per unit on properties that he didn't even own. And I was like, come on, man, like this sounds like some midnight infomercial. Like there's no way. Right. And I'm like, show me the numbers. I'm a numbers guy. So show me the data. And sure enough, right, he kind of pulled the curtain back and showed me this business model. And I was like, this is insane. Like the amount of cash flow this guy was generating on very few units, quite frankly, that he didn't even own was insane. So I went home, talked to my wife about it. I was like, this is it. Like, this is the vehicle that we've been looking for. And, but I was still a little iffy about like not owning the properties. It just felt weird at first. So we said, all right, well, if we're going to do it, let's give it a shot. So we took a loan out of our 401k and we purchased this little 2-bed, 2-bath condo up in New Hampshire, up in the mountains in between a couple ski resorts and a lot of hiking and theme parks and stuff in that area. And we said, if we're going to do this, we're going to make ourselves a promise that every single month we're going to use this as a family. Because the biggest lesson that we learned with all that stuff with our son was that family and time was our most valuable asset. Mm-hmm. So we made a priority. Okay, we're going to buy this property, but we're going to use it every single month. And then when we don't use it, we're going to rent it out and make money on it. Mm-hmm. And, bought the property, put some money into rehab it. We furnished it. And just like my buddy was telling me, that property has generated anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month, every single month in positive cash flow. And we use it as a family every single month.
Wow.
And I was like, this is the coolest business model ever. Like, I get paid to own a vacation house that I love going to. But the problem is I used all my liquid cash to buy it and I can't live off of $1,500 a month. Right. So I needed to find another way to continue to scale and grow this business. And, for those of you that aren't familiar, there's 3 different ways that you can make money with short-term rentals. Okay. You can buy a property like we did. You can rent a property. Like I can go to somebody like Dwaine and say, hey, Dwaine, I want to rent one of your 2-bedroom apartments. Say I'm going to pay you $1,500 a month and I'm going to furnish it. I'll put insurance over it. I'll take better care of it than anybody else. It's going to be professionally deep cleaned multiple times a week. I'll have eyes on the property with some different technology that we can talk about. And basically, I'm going to make the spread. So anything, I'm going to pay you $1,500 a month, and then I should generate anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 a month on Airbnb, and I make the spread. Right. The problem though was I didn't have enough cash for the first month's rent, the last month's rent, security deposit, and the furniture, which should be roughly, 10 to 20 grand. I didn't even have that. Right. I used all my liquid savings to buy this place. I said, well, what's another way? I said, well, what if I approach somebody like Dwaine and I said, hey, look at this business model that I have now. You can call it corporate housing, whatever you want to call it. What if we partnered on a property? All right, you pay to furnish it. I'll tell you exactly what to put in it, but you furnish it, I'll run it, and we'll do a 75-25 split. And I guarantee I can make you more money than you would on a 12-month lease. And the first owner, well, not the first, but after pitching a bunch of owners on that business model, I finally got a yes, right? And I finally got a yes. And this gentleman was renting out a 1-bedroom apartment for about $2,000 a month. And after we got the system up and running, he's been averaging anywhere from $3,500 to $4,500 a month, like to him, like profit. And on top of, the fees that I'm making on the property and everything else. So once we started building that track record and having the results, it just kind of snowballed. He referred us to more clients and to more clients. And, now we've got 11 live properties between 4 different states right now. Wow. So all the way from New Hampshire down to Florida.
Wow. So like that's kind of mind blowing because you're like I said, you don't own the property yet you're making all this cash flow from it. Airbnb for, many people is kind of like a specialized hotel maybe, or like a special inn or something of that sort. So how are you kind of, maybe it would kind of start with going through all of the systems, of course, but kind of like, what is a start? Are you looking at a place that you say this is a desirable area, then starting there? Or is it any potential open rental is, fair game?
Yeah, for sure. So what I would typically say, first and foremost, there's something called like the Burger King effect, right? So if you look anywhere where a McDonald's is building a new restaurant, look across the street and most likely Burger King is going to be there, right? So McDonald's spends all this money on market research to figure out where's the best place to put a new McDonald's. And then Burger King just waits and then they slap one up across the street, right? So if you're looking at a market, where are all the new hotels going? They've spent millions on market research.
Exactly.
So if there's some new hotels going in an area, it's a real good indication that there's a good market for short-term rentals. Right? If there's not, I've broken it down. There's basically 9 different traveler profiles, and we can talk about a few of them real quick, right? So most people think of like vacations, right? Like the place in New Hampshire, that's up in the mountains in between a bunch of ski resorts. In the summer, it's near a major theme park for kids. Like I knew that one would do well. But as another example, what about corporate travel, which is probably the most lucrative business model, quite frankly, because you got business travelers traveling every single week, regardless of what's going on, weather-wise, season-wise. It's just corporate travel. And right now, a fun fact, as of a year ago, this article said that there were over 700,000 companies using Airbnb for work travel now. That was over a year ago.
Wow.
So, I mean, that stat just blew me away when I saw that. I was like, wow. So the more companies that get on board, you know, the more corporate travel that you're going to get. So you've got vacationers, corporate travel. You've got any relocations. Actually, you know what? We'll throw another one out there. Anywhere near a university or some type of education, right? It could be a college. It could be a state school. It could be a boarding school. It could be a trade school, like a nursing program where they might be there for 13 weeks. Like that's a perfect spot for a short-term rental, because for them to rent a hotel for 13 weeks is going to be astronomical, right? It's the rates are just going to be way too much.
And for some people, it's not practical either to be staying in a hotel for 13 weeks. I can't imagine staying that long there.
Yeah. They're not going to have, you know, a kitchen. So they're paying for food every day and everything else. Right. So if they got a 1 or a 2 bedroom short-term rental, they could split it with somebody else, or at least they could save money and like cook their own meals every day. Right. So you've got vacations, corporate travel, any academics, and then anywhere near a hospital, right? Like if you think about my origin story, we were at a hospital for 3 weeks straight. You know, I was sleeping on a chair like this, like every night, because we didn't have there weren't any, you know, rentals down there. But, you know, you've got patients that are there for weeks at a time. You've got traveling doctors that are like specialists in certain areas that are in town for a couple of days. It just draws a lot of short-term traffic through anywhere near a major hospital. So those are kind of 4 out of the 9.
What about as far as kind of like you mentioned kind of short-term, you know, doctors or you know, corporate. What about kind of when you're talking to the landlords, because some of them are marketing them for like a year or at least 6 months. So are they, you know, how is that conversation of getting them on board with this business plan? You know, I know like after a certain track record, they're going to say, oh, I see that you've done, you know, 10 of these and now I can, you know, move forward with that. But as far as that kind of initial discussion, how does that usually go?
Yeah, for sure. So if you're driving, you're going to want to pause it or go back and listen to this again so you can take some notes, right? But I'll give you a couple nuggets. So the first one is a website. It's called airdna.co. So what AirDNA does is it pulls all the data behind Airbnb, VRBO, and HomeAway, and you can plug in an address. You plug in the address, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, and the number of people it can sleep, right? So say it's a 2-bed, 1-bath, it could sleep 6 people, okay? You plug that in. AirDNA will pull all the comps and all the historical data over the last 12 months, and it'll give you what it thinks you'll do for revenue, for occupancy, and what your average daily rate will be. So you run that, you print that sheet out, and as an example for the case study I was talking about earlier, he was making $2,000 a month. I printed him out a slip from AirDNA that showed his property could bring in about $50,000 over the course of a year, which like doubled his revenue, so his ears perked up. Then the conversation becomes, okay, that sounds good, but how do I know somebody's not going to trash my property? Right? Like that's the next immediate question. Okay. So I have a 4-step system that I use to walk landlords through that. Okay. So the first is we don't just let anybody book the property. Okay. So we have certain parameters that we set up on Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway that guests have to meet certain criteria. Like they have to have a completed profile with their name, email, phone number, government issued ID, and they also have to have a positive review from another host already, which is like a landlord referral, right? And they have to message us and let us know what brings them to the area, how many people are going to be there, and who is going to be staying at the property with them. So if they meet all those criteria, okay, boom, then we'll accept the booking. Next is we use a Wi-Fi lock system. So nobody ever gets a physical key to the property. So the particular system that we use, the guests either can get a keypad code or they can download the app on their phone, and they set up a profile. And I can see if their selfie from the app matches the selfie from Airbnb. It's the same person that's booking and going to the property, right?
Mm.
And their access is only good from the time of check-in to check-out. So nobody could like ever go back. You see a lot of amateurs will use these like keypad door locks and they don't change the codes. So like if I stay at your place and then I come back 2 days later, I'm like, dude, you see that 80-inch TV? You know what I mean? Like so from a security standpoint, they can only access the property for that period of time and then it's gone. Then we use security cameras on the outside of the property, right? So if this gentleman says, oh, it's going to be me, my wife, and my 2 kids. Okay, cool. When they get there, it's motion activated. It'll alert me on my phone or your assistant or whoever you want. And you can verify if you're feeling a little weird about the reservation, you can verify, oh, it's him, his wife, and his 2 kids on the security camera. Then when they get into the property, this is the one that blows everybody's minds, okay? When they get into the property, we have a device in there that measures noise levels, all right? It doesn't record conversations. It doesn't record video, nothing. The only thing it does is measure decibels, which is like how loud a noise is, right? So we set that device up. So our quiet hours are from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. So if they go over a certain threshold during that time period, I'll get a text message immediately. So if they're making a bunch of noise in the middle of the night, I get a text message and then I message them or I call them and I say, hey, so-and-so, I hope you're having a great time. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but like you agreed to in the house rules, our quiet hours are 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. And I just got a noise complaint from one of the neighbors. I'm going to have to ask you to tone it down or we're going to have somebody from our team escort you off the property. And again, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but again, we've got great neighbors and I want to keep them happy. And that's happened probably 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years. And every time I send that message or make that phone call, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Right? Because people genuinely get it. Like it's your house. It's a home. Like you want to be a good neighbor. Right? But I word it specifically that I got a noise complaint from a good neighbor, not like, hey, my little noise sensor went off. Yeah. Like it's fully disclosed in the listing that we have that technology in the property. But I find people respond better when I say, hey, we got a noise complaint from a neighbor than like, hey, RoboCop just caught you. Tone it down. You know what I mean? So between those 4 systems, and then I also advise my property owners to get a certain type of insurance where it's a blended homeowners policy with a commercial liability policy, right? Like similar if you're going to rent out a property as a rental, like a regular homeowners policy is not going to get the job done. So between those 4 things that I control, plus their insurance that they're putting on the property, like they're totally covered.
Wow. The thing I like about that, because it actually is like more, more comfort to the owner than if you just rented it out regularly to the open market. Because some landlords are not doing like really in-depth background checks. I mean, they'll just do an application. They'll do kind of like a regular stuff. A lot of them, they'll just fill them in and then they'll find out they destroyed the place 6 months later after they moved out of the place. But you guys are doing the check with the app on the phone. You have all of these systems in place. They're doing all of this stuff before they get there, and they have to get a referral from a previous, system, Airbnb or whatever before they even go on there. So like that's just that alone makes people feel more comfortable. Say, okay, I'm gonna go forward with this system.
Yeah, and if you think of it, we're in the property on average. Our average stay is 3 days, 3 nights, so 3 to 4 days, right? So we're in there, the place is getting professionally deep cleaned and sanitized like 2 to 3 times a week. When was the last time one of your tenants hired a professional cleaning company to like sanitize your property? Exactly. Probably never, right? So we've got eyes on the property all the time. The owners can go check on the property anytime they want. They just give us a heads up and we make sure there's no guests and they can go check the property anytime they want.
Wow.
And then they just get monthly owner reports that show a breakdown of the finances. They get an automatic bank transfer to their account by the 15th of the month, and that's it. And they're totally hands off.
What are you seeing as far as the trend? Is it more owners are learning about this, getting into the game, or are you seeing in specific marketplaces, or is it like for me who wants to get into it, run this type of business? Is it like too late, or is it is there more opportunity?
No, I mean, there's 1.4 million new people joining Airbnb every week. So, I mean, the demand is there. Now, what you will see is a lot more people are going to start hosting, but they're not doing it at a professional level like myself and my students are doing, right? Like they're just filling it up with like furniture off of Craigslist or Goodwill or whatever. They're taking pictures with their phones. They're not responding to guest questions. They're not running it like a business. It's like a side hobby. So eventually, if that's what you're doing, like we're going to crush you, quite frankly. Not to sound arrogant, but like you're going to have to step your game up, right? Like there's no way around that. And if you want, we can talk about some of the different systems that we use or that folks should use if you want to get into this business and really scale it to whether you want to replace a W-2 income or, retire a spouse. Probably the proudest thing that I've done with this business is one, I was able to retire my mom a couple of months ago, which was friggin' awesome. And then two, my wife just quit her full-time job like a month ago to come build this business with me full-time, which is freaking awesome. Like that alone, like, again, it comes back to family time, right? Like my wife and I just had lunch before we hopped on here. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different ball game now. So
exactly. Yeah. The people who's listening to this is people who want financial freedom, passive income, and get more free time. Me, I love traveling. My wife is from Europe, so we want to go there at least once a year, visit a family and do a lot of family stuff. We just took a trip down to the Bridgeport. So because let's talk about like the system. How do people kind of get started, or maybe some starter tips? And of course, you have your program that everyone should be checking this out. But yeah, let's kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll give a link out. Like I have a free, I think it's 90 minutes now, like a deep dive masterclass. It's totally free. And I'll give you guys a link at the end where I really go deep with all this stuff. But again, the why that we got started, right, was to have a business that didn't rely on me to trade my time for money. So I run this business now in less than 2 hours a week using these systems. Okay. So you're going to need 4 different systems. You need a pricing system. So anytime you go on Airbnb and you see somebody's rates are the same every single day, just know that they're an amateur. Like they are a total amateur. Okay. We use dynamic pricing software. So our rates change every single day, just like a hotel, just like an airline. So it does all this crazy algorithms to calculate what is the optimized price for this market today. Maybe Beyonce is coming to town. Like I should be charging more today on a Friday with Beyonce in town than on a Wednesday in the middle of February, right? Like my system does all that for me. And that's why we typically crush like the market average daily rate and the average daily average occupancy for the month, because that system just optimizes it without us having to think, right? So that's pricing. Then the next is access and security. So I talked about that a little bit, right? Having our system automates the whole check-in process, right? So the second we get a booking, it triggers a sequence of events in my system. So it automatically takes the guest's information, creates a keypad code, which is the last 4 digits of their phone number. Wow. And then it automatically sends it to the guest. And it's only good from 4 o'clock on check-in to 11 a.m. on checkout. I don't have to do any of that, right? And it automatically communicates that to the guest, right? So that's like the access and the security piece, right? So the Wi-Fi, then you've got the Ring security cameras and noise detection software that if you check out the webinar, I'll give you like everything like that I actually use, like the names of everything and all the softwares, and we'll go deep on that. The next piece is guest communication. And then this is where most people go wrong, because if you don't have a system to automate this, especially once you add a few units, it's going to become a full-time job because people have questions, right? So our system, again, once they book, it triggers this sequence of events, right? The sequence of events that starts. So as soon as they book, they get a confirmation message that goes right through the platform that gives them, here's your confirmation dates. Thanks so much for booking with us, blah, blah, blah. Stay tuned for some future messages. Then 3 days before they get there, it automatically sends their access code, like that keypad code. It sends them the house manual, tells them where to park, address, all the information about the property, all that stuff. On the day of check-in, it lets them know we check in 4 hours. It sends a message 4 hours after check-in. Hey, how are you settling in? we want to give you a 5-star experience. Is there anything that you need from us? Right. Then we send checkout information. We follow up for reviews, like all of this stuff. If I had to do it manually, even if I had it templated and like had to copy and paste it, right? Like my system sent over like 3,000 messages last month.
Wow.
If I had to even copy and paste 3,000 messages, I wouldn't leave this computer like
you'd
for
be out of
24
business.
hours a day, right? So it can get overwhelming quick, right? So if you want to, you can easily replace your income, like W-2 income with this model, like very, very quickly. Because again, you're just generating more cash flow, right? Like you should average 800 to 1,200 a month per unit, like average, right? Like that's a generalization, but like if you're doing it right, like those are my targets, right? So you get the guest communication piece, and the software that I use also has artificial intelligence. So it can tell like, oh, this is a question about the pool. And then it will automatically send, oh, it looks like you got a question about the pool. Here's where it is. Here's the address. Here's the hours. Here's what you need. Right. So again, like I've built up this system over the last 2 years where every time I get a new question that hasn't been asked, I add it to the system. So it's just, rinse and repeat. And then the last piece is how to manage the cleanings, right? Because your cleaners are like the lifeblood of your business. Has anybody traveled before? You got to the hotel or an Airbnb and it was dirty? You're like, oh, hell no. You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, I don't care how nice a place is. If it's dirty, people are going to be angry, right? So we use an app. So again, it all syncs up. So anytime we get a booking, it automatically shoots it over to our cleaners. This app is also like a marketplace for cleaners. So anytime I get a new property, like we just launched one in North Carolina, new market for us, I go in, I say, okay, this is a 5-bed, 3-bath property. Here's the address. And I send it out. And then I get quotes from all these cleaners through this app. And they're already reviewed from other hosts. So I can see who's been in the game long enough and who's got positive reviews. And then I can add 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 of them to my inventory. And then anytime I get a booking, it notifies all of them. And the first one to accept it gets the cleaning. So I have backups in place.
Wow.
So if somebody gets sick or whatever, or somebody can't take it that day, I've got backups to cover it. Right. So again, once they book it, it automatically notifies them. The first one to accept it gets the booking. I get notified when they get to the property. I get notified when they finish. They send me pictures of the property so I know it's clean. And we have a checklist of all the supplies that they fill out. And then they text my assistant that photo now. So we do like 1 supply run a month. My assistant orders everything to like the local Target or the local Walmart. My cleaners swing by, pick it up, restock it, send me a picture, and we're done. Right. So every little system that we've built was in mind of like, all right, I'll do it once or twice to learn it, but then how do I systematize it so it doesn't rely on me anymore? So now the only thing I really do is like manage my assistants, make sure that they know what to do, and business development, going out and meeting new clients, going to meetups like we met, and just, generating new business. Like that's my highest and best use, and doing content. Like I love teaching this because I wish I found out about this 5 years ago. You know what I mean? But that's awesome.
Where do you, so this is great for a person to have like a single family home. You had mentioned that you guys working on some multi-unit type of stuff. Like what does this kind of caters to? 'Cause I know people got all different types of properties.
So we kind of run the gamut. Right. The first one that we bought was a condo in a vacation market, which was great for cash flow, but it just adds a layer of complication because you got to keep the condo board happy, right? You get a noise complaint or whatever. Some people, they're just not into this model. So it just adds a layer. So keep that in mind. If you're looking at a condo, make sure that it's okay in the condo docs that you can do this. We do have a few single family homes, like the one in Florida, the one in North Carolina. They're just beautiful, nice, larger homes. The majority of the portfolio is like 2 to 4 unit buildings. And the reason for that is depending on your market. Some markets, it's completely legal to do this. Some markets have certain restrictions, but the most common restriction that I've seen is that it has to be owner occupied. So if you know an owner that's house hacking or lives in a multi-unit building, or at least has their primary residence listed as their multi-unit building, you're fine, right? That seems to be like the number one regulation going forward. So that's just been my bread and butter. And I typically stay about 25 to 30 minutes outside of any major city. because the major cities, they have a lack of housing right now, right? Rents are going through the roof, like real estate market's cranking. But if I go 30 minutes outside of the city, they're a little more lenient. They're a little more open to it. They like the tax revenue that they're getting from it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my 30,000 foot view of like choosing markets.
Wow. Yeah. You pretty much, and then you just answered my next question there, but yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes, and then we'll get it to you at the end. But for people to kind of know a little bit more about you, I know you kind of talked about your backstory, but what's now with your new systems in place, what's a typical day for you? I know you did say doing a lot of prospecting, doing a lot more teaching, but do you have any specific morning routines that you do that kind of help you kind of be, on top of things and become more successful?
Yeah, for sure. For those of you that have read Hal Elrod's book, The Miracle Morning, like I typically like to follow that. I'm not perfect by any means. Some days I just sleep in or whatever and mess it up. But ideally, I like to get up by 5, like to get my morning workout in. For me, I do better and stay more consistent when I have like a goal or some type of competition, right? So actually yesterday, my brother and I just signed up to do a half Ironman in Florida. So now I'm like, I'm scared out of my mind. So, I'm going to be in the gym now, like grinding. But I like to get my workout in, do a steam, do some meditation and some journaling. And then I'm big into visualization. So I like to visualize like my 5-year goals. And then like, what does my ideal day look like? Like even today, right? It's like, okay, I knew we were having this podcast. What's the ideal outcome? What kind of value do I want to bring? Like what would be best case scenario? Like what's the ideal outcome? And I visualize that happening before we even get on. And then we just tend to manifest it because we've already been there subconsciously. So I'm big into the working out. You get the, I don't know the right terminology, but for me, it just gets me energized. I feel good. I'm confident. And then I do some meditation, visualization, some journaling, and that's it.
I love it. Yeah, you touched big that you're really big in the family. Connect. You have mentioned the story. You talked about your brother, but can you kind of elaborate more on like what you're most grateful for?
For me, I am most grateful. So after 18 months, and this is a totally separate story. After 18 months, my son outgrew that disease. I say outgrew in quotes because I've told that story on some other shows. I don't know how much time we have, but for anybody that's read the book Think and Grow Rich, have you read that book, Dwaine?
Mm-hmm. Plenty of times.
So So the first story in that book, right, where his son was born without ears, and doctors told him that his son was never going to hear again, but he wouldn't even let that enter his mind, right? He just kept instilling that belief in his son that he was going to be able to hear someday. And I held on to that story when my son was sick, and I just kept telling everybody, I'm like, the doctors are saying that there was only been one documented case ever of somebody outgrowing this disease. I'm like, sweet. So now there's 2, right? Mm-hmm. And I just held on to that belief, and I kept reinforcing that and did a lot of visualization exercises, like breathing through my son and like visualizing him being healthy. And then, after 18 months, he just snapped out of it, and doctors couldn't explain why, but like, I just did that visualization exercise like every day and just held that belief and that certainty. So that's what I'm most grateful for, that, my son's healthy. I've got an amazing wife, great supporting family. I'm healthy. The money stuff is great, but like I'll teach you guys how to make money, right? Hop on that webinar. I'll show you exactly how to make money with this, but like the money without the other stuff that like is important to you is just empty. Like exactly. The money just gives me freedom to do more or spend more time with the people that I care about the most. That's it. It's just a tool,
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love it, man. It's like I said, when we met, like I said, instantly connected. Like I said, loving your story, love your background, kind of love what your goals and your ambitions, kind of like it's just like the same exact thing I'm looking towards. And I know you're gonna touch a lot of people when we post this podcast, and really appreciate it. And you're just giving back by just kind of giving all this information. You got your 90-minute webinar where you just kind of just pulling up the veil, just kind of showing people how it gets going. But there's a lot of little bit of different pieces. So can you share for us the link or where it's going to be posted, or maybe we'll just wait till the show gets released and we can talk about it? But how do we get in contact with you otherwise?
Yeah. So the link will be strsecrets.com. So STR stands for short-term rental. So it's strsecrets.com. That'll bring you to the free 90-minute training. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at the Airbnb guy. I'm always putting out fresh content. kind of going behind the scenes on all these property launches that we're doing. And that's probably the two best places. I'm pretty active on Insta and Facebook right now. So
awesome. Yeah, just look up your name, Airbnb guy. You'll be able to see him. Like I said, we'll have this show out pretty soon. You can get that. And like I said, we'll make sure to have that in the show notes. Brother Mike, we'll really appreciate it again. Thank you for dropping all these nuggets, giving us this information. I look forward to seeing you again. Like I said, we're practically neighbors, so I'm gonna have to head up there one day. We're gonna get some food or something like that. Have the families meet up. But again, enjoy the rest of the week, and we look forward to connect with you soon.
Thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Take care, my friend.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at DwaineLClarke.com, as well as find us on Facebook for more useful content and resources.